I'm glad that I'm the one who found you. That's why I'm always hanging round you. Do I love you? Oh my, do I? Honey, honey, deed I do.
Hello and welcome to one and all to another instalment of the Kennington Bioscope's live online silent film show. And with this 6th edition, we have a packed show with 5 films for you, 4 coming to us courtesy of that fantastic resource held by the EYE Filmmuseum, the Jean Desmet collection, deemed of such international importance to be the first film collection entered into the Memory of the World Register by UNESCO. The Memory of the World to me seems such a wonderful concept, and one perhaps brought closer to us through this recent time, with many of our familiar activities curtailed and venues closed. We have all, I'm sure, been holding a memory of the world familiar to us from before that has been longed for and quite possibly dreamed of. So tonight we have in our first few films a visitation to the arena of cinema and fantasies of such experiences, whether comic or romantic, of visits to fiction factories, film studios, the personnel and technicians, sets and scenarios held and created by the makers of the dreams we see on screen. And so for our first film, it seems entirely appropriate to take a scenic ride into the territory of the future Fields of Dreams with views of Los Angeles from 1912, released as a split reel on May 25th, 1912 by the Imp Company, coupled with the intriguing sounding The Maid's Stratagem, a comedy drama, and top marks to them there for getting the word stratagem into a film title. We're not going to be seeing The Maid's Stratagem, but the Scenic was released with that film. The two films were billed enticingly as a Saturday split Imp. Apparently one of the best splits the Imp ever produced, also boasted their advertising blurb. Imp stood for Independent Moving Pictures and was Carl Laemmle's company, then based in New York at Fort Lee, and this film is like an advert for the future home of his firm, which transformed from Imp to Universal in this year and would start to focus its production in Hollywood from then on, opening Universal City Studios in 1915. Then we moved to France for some projection booth shenanigans, and with further exploits from that comedy character Arthème Dupin, whom we've met previously in an earlier edition of KBTV Online, episode 2, in which Arthème Dupin escaped again. Ernest Servais, a Parisian actor, director, producer, directed and starred in scores of films, getting into endless on-screen scrapes with his takeoff of the name and character of Arsène Lupin, the literary gentleman thief and master of disguise, created by writer Maurice Leblanc in 1905. Here in Arthème opérateur from 1913, our hero is seen at the start happily reading his copy of Le Cinéma in a bar where he spies an ideal job prospect as a projectionist. Does it matter that he's inexperienced? I mean, how hard can it be? Fans of the 1957 film, The Smallest Show on Earth, with its loving look at the ups and downs of film exhibition, celebrated and immortalised as we pass through the musty curtains of the faithful Fleep hit with its poor put-upon projectionist Mr. Quill, played by Peter Sellers, will find much in common here. Indeed, any of us who relish the rush of that live celluloid experience, a unique event, never to be repeated in the same way twice, will revel here in the obvious delights and dangers inherent in running film through a projector, both for the operator and the audience. Arthème himself may wreak havoc, but the star and director, Ernest Servais, doesn't miss the trick of some self-promotion and an in-joke to the audience when his character passes a prominently placed poster for one of his own films, Arthème Visits Marseille, made in the previous year. A few years hence, with our next film, we have the chance to glance into the inner workings of some film studios in the USA, to see some of the movie-making personnel in situ and to meet their stars and the writers who provide the material to make those stars shine. We'll be seeing the short one-reel documentary film Photoplay magazine Screen Supplement No. 1, released in January 1919. Although the series had been hanging around for a while already before it was ever seen publicly, as explained in the notes for supplement No. 2, an extract of which, showing William S. Hart, was shown in Pordenone last year. The Photoplay magazine screen supplement series was announced in September 1917 for states' rights buyers, conceived as 12 one-reelers showing the stars as they are. Although Photoplay editor James R. Quirk announced that all profits would be given to the American Red Cross, it appears that none of the shorts hit the screens until January 1919, distributed by Educational Films Corporation and released one film per month. In this beautifully tinted edition, we'll see the Santa Barbara studios of the American Film Manufacturing Company, also known as the Flying A, and you can see why from their winged logo above the gate in a panel quite high up, giving us a great view to a revealing through working studio sets, taking in actors, extras, comedians and cameramen at ease, and some dancers caught in the moment as they make a society picture. Here we see a glimpse of a 15-year-old Mary Miles Minter, she of the infamous William Desmond Taylor incident to come. But here she is with her regular director of 1916-17, James Kirkwood, who directed her in 9 films. Then we move back east to the World Film Company, created by Louis J. Selznick in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and some quite hair-raising scenes with Montague Love, Say No More. A delightful domestic scene follows with comic power couple Mr. and Mrs. C. Then we're on to the real luminaries with stellar powerhouse Douglas Fairbanks and his star writers John Emerson and Alita. Plus, to finish, an expose of one of the secrets of camera trickery. Then from the factories and creators of our movie dreams, as we resubmit these film memories of 100 years ago to our current collective memory register, we enter the arena of the effect these productions and the people who populate them can have on the emotions of an audience. In The Picture Idol, made by the Vitagraph Company and released in May 1912, quite the film star herself, Clara Kimball Young plays Beth Ward, a screen devotee who has eyes for no one but her beloved Howard Hanson, played by Maurice Costello. An advertising blurb for the film read, "Lovely, perfectly lovely." That's what all the girls say when they see the hero in the picture. These idol worshippers are irrepressible. The player in this picture strikes a sure remedy to cure a persistent devotee. Our hearts will be set aflutter by having 2 marvellous accompanists for these 4 films. We have Mr. John Sweeney playing live for us for the first and third film, and Mr. Colin Sell, who specially pre-recorded his accompaniments earlier in the week for the second and fourth film. Enjoy these films which follow. Thank you, Colin and John, our idols of the keys, for your accompaniment for these 4 films, ending with The Picture Idol. And so Beth was cured of her idolatry of handsome Howard Hanson, but do we really think her celluloid devotions would lay entirely idle and that she'd never fall for another? And so we move on to a female screen dream, Fay Wray, with a long-lasting career and a long-lived celluloid actress who set many hearts aflutter over the years, not only for her iconic appearance, grasped in the giant hand of that king they called Kong, a film which saved RKO from bankruptcy, but was a pre-code scream queen in other such films as Michael Curtiz's Dr. X and Mystery of the Wax Museum, as well as The Vampire Bat for Warner Brothers, continuing on in films and TV periodically until a final appearance in 1980. But she also served in silence, and in 1926, when our next film, in which she stars uncredited, was made, Fay Wray was just 19, had already been in pictures for 3 years, and had just been named one of the Wampus Baby Stars for that year. Having appeared so far in several Hal Roach shorts alongside such names as Stan Laurel and James Finlayson, and playing a small role in a personal favourite of mine as a shop assistant in the one-reel Martha Sleeper comedy Shaw Mike, she became a Western heroine for a spell, starting with our next film, Foursquare Steve, and at the same time as these, landing her first serious leading lady role for Erich von Stroheim in big-budget, box office flop, The Wedding March, not released by Paramount until 2 years after production had ended. Fay was the romantic interest for several leading men in these westerns, including Hoot Gibson, Art Accord and Jack Mower. But another regular celluloid cowboy co-star of hers was Edmund J. Cobb. Cobb's future direction certainly seemed to be mapped out when he was a youngster. His parents ran a photography studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and images of a late teenage Edmund adorned in cowboy garb are held today by the archive of the Museum of New Mexico. And so in 1912, within just a few months of that photo session, he found himself appearing as an unnamed horse rider in a D.W. Griffith picture, A Pueblo Legend, shot on location in New Mexico, starring both Jack and Mary Pickford. Another year and another film passed. Then in 1914-15, he really started to hit his stride, and his celluloid steed was spurred to full speed, sans cessation, throughout the Western settings of the movies for the next few decades. And he really was one hell of a regular celluloid cowpuncher, with 666 film titles branded to his name, his last film being in 1966, with a few years left to run on his very full life by that point. And here in episode 6 of KBTV, we're visiting with the 12th of the 25 westerns he made in 1926. And I guess by rights, after my build-up, it really should be 6 Square Steve that we're about to run, but of course it's not. It's 4 Square Steve that we'll be a-seeing. The film comes from the collection of our friend and colleague, Christopher Bird, and is his own transfer from that 9.5mm Pathescope print. There are, Chris says, at least 4 in all of these Universal Mustang 2-reelers surviving on reduced 9.5 prints, the home viewing format which is responsible for providing quite a few of the only extant versions of otherwise lost features, but they also do similar service for such supporting programme material as this. Chris told me that it was issued by Pathescope in 1936, much more complete than most of their releases. This version represents around 80% of the original. It also has the original main title, very rare for Pathescope, who usually remade it in their house style. But these later 9.5mm releases don't have the ravishing photographic quality of the notched era, so it's a little murky. While it's not particularly rare on 9.5mm, Chris says, It seems to have been popular with the film libraries. So the majority of copies one comes across have been run hundreds of times by inexperienced home showmen and are excessively worn. It took me years to find a relatively decent copy. This one came from a collector in North Oxford, whose collection I bought in early 2017. It was also in the Pathescope library, but I haven't heard of a surviving copy. Pathescope prints were only for rent, not sale, so are far rarer today. Thanks, Chris. The original Pathescope catalogue entry for the film calls it a first-class drama of the West. Hard riding, spectacular rescues, and one good fight being some of the high spots. This is a regular, well-made Western programme filler, directed by German-born Ernst Lemley, nephew of Karl, himself a rescuer of many with his very large family at Universal. In another of these westerns, Fay Wray appeared under the direction of William Wyler, also part of the Universal family, brought over from Germany, a cousin of Karl Lemley's. By the time of this release, 26-year-old Ernst had already directed dozens of these bread and butter westerns for the company, and even returned to Germany for a while in 1929, making 2 Deutsche Universal Film co-productions, taking actress June Marlowe along with him for the ride to star there in The Unusual Past of Thea Carter. But with Ernst having to step in and finish the picture when another, even younger, fellow German-born Universal Western director Joseph Levigaard fell ill. And while in Germany, he also helmed the film Der Teufelsreporter, aka Hell of a Reporter, which was not only written by a young Billy Wilder, but boasts Billy's only ever acting credit. But after making just one stilted talkie back in the USA in 1930 entitled What Men Want, it was decided that this was definitely not what Universal either wanted or needed, and Ernst was retired forever from filmmaking at the age of 30. Another element which makes the film superior for a short is its use of the Akeley camera in the climax. As self-confessed and proud camera nerd Chris Bird explained to me, this distinctive model has a specially designed gyroscopic head, allowing these wonderful smooth telephoto lens shots, following the riders fast with a blurred background. This was a huge advance over the geared tripod heads used in earlier years, where the camera sort of zigzags to make a diagonal move. The camera, with its distinctive round shape, lending it an industry nickname as the Akeley Pancake, was used to great effect capturing aerial scenes for Wings, the first best Oscar-winning picture, as it allows for a shutter opening of 220 degrees. And according to camera historian Sam Dodge, no other motion picture camera had that ability until after the turn of the 21st century. So this is a quality programmer with the extra element of an uncredited Fay Wray adding to the thrills and romance. And let's not forget, it was Chris who was responsible for spotting that it was her in the film in the first place. He generously released the film into the public domain with a simultaneous essay publication by his regular collaborator, Fritzi Kramer of Movie Silently fame. And we've put the link to her review in the Dropbox below on this YouTube page if you'd like to find out more. So we'd like to thank them both, and particularly Chris, for revisiting his digital files of the film to help in its preparation and transfer to Tod, our technical team dynamo for the online bioscope, who climbs the digital format mountains needed to have the films looking their best for you. Of course, I'd like to thank Chris personally again for his assistance in offering the film and supplying me with images and info to fill in the story of Foursquare Steve. And I'm very pleased that our own Cyrus Gabrysch, who I'm sure has his producer's Stetson on at the ready, will now be pointing his piano cam towards the west for his live accompaniment. So let's all now giddy up with Edmund, Fay and Mr. Gabrysch. happy to have seen Edmund and Fay win the day. It's lovely. Thank you, Chris. Hope you've enjoyed our programme this evening, and my thanks to the EYE Filmmuseum and curator Elif Rongan Keneche, and also to Christopher Bird for their generosity in supplying the films. To all the marvellous musicians, John Sweeney, Colin and Cyrus Gabrysch, and to the Cinema Museum volunteers for their assistance, and to all of the Bioscope team, particularly Tod, John and Cyrus, for making this production possible with all of its live elements and interactive features. And of course, even after this live stream ends, you will be able to watch it again or catch up later via our YouTube channel for free. We do have a donation page, a coffee page, for which you can find the link below, and on our Twitter page, where if you wish, you can leave us a coffee contribution and comments, which we love to read. As also, we love to hear your social media feedback and read the chat box conversation had right here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram and sign up to our email list on our website, kenningtonbioscope.com, to receive updates on our upcoming broadcasts and catch up on all of our previous episodes here. Of course, one of the positive elements of this awful situation of the last few months has been the incredibly inclusive and democratising nature of being able to share with you via this medium somewhat of our style of presentation that we've been previously enjoying with a mostly home crowd, our welcome creatures of habit at the Cinema Museum in London. We never guessed our shows would have moved online, and for those of us involved in producing them, that it would occupy so much of our time and consciousness, perhaps in both waking and in sleeping, and that in amongst our celluloid fantasies that we'd all be dreaming of streaming. But here we are, and perhaps once this is all over, our memories of this new world we've been creating and experiencing for ourselves will now include these and other such shows as part of our mental register and memories of the world. I know that for many of our viewers, they have kindly commented that these KBTV broadcasts have marked high points in the last few months. So it really is wonderful to know that we have brought occasions of joy to the here and now, with the coupling of cinematic dreams of 100 years ago, give or take a few years, and the musical accompaniment of today. So thank you all again very much for watching and being a part of all of this. We're in it together. Goodbye for now, and all the best to you. Stay safe and see you soon. Bye.
Sure, I love her, baby, precious baby, deed I do.